be seated. Should call the case before the truth came off, or call it not. State of Wisconsin versus Kristopher Torgerson, 14 CF 860, appearances.
The state appears by Assistant Attorney General Richard Before and Deborah Alley, Your Honor.
Kristopher Torgerson appears with Attorney Thomas Roman. Good morning.
You ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
The defense will call Jay Gutowski. May I retrieve him?
You may.
Come on, this lady, please.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Right here, sir. Take water if you need it. Please speak into the mic. Would you state your first and last name and spell each for the court reporter, please?
J. Gutowski, Jayegutowski.
And where do you currently reside? What city and state?
City is Wausau, Wisconsin.
And how old are you?
I'm 52 years old.
And are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
I know it was a while ago, but I want to draw your attention to the fall of 2010, October, okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember where you were living then?
It was, I was either living on a farm or I was living with my brother at 906 Matthew Road.
Okay. And do you recall on that date did you have a cell phone?
Yes, I did, sir.
And do you recall the telephone number that you would have had with that cell phone?
No, I do not.
If I were to tell you that records reveal that you were the subscriber for a telephone number 715-393-5335, does that number sound like you had for at one period of time?
Sir, to be honest, I couldn't tell you, but if it records show it, I can't.
Your Honor, I guess I'm going to object to that answer. You can't comment on what records show or don't show. If he doesn't remember, he doesn't remember.
I don't remember.
The part after, I don't know, to be stricken.
So ordered. Were you associated with anyone in particular back in 2010?
Yes, Jeff Borse.
Okay. How do you spell his last name?
I do believe B-O-R-S-E.
Did he have access to your cell phone?
Yes, he did.
For what purpose?
To find me crack cocaine.
And this would have been in October of 2010?
Yes, sir.
What times of day would Mr. Borse try to find you crack cocaine?
It didn't matter. I was in active addiction. It was all periods of the day, time. It didn't matter.
Was he fielding telephone calls on your telephone regarding crack cocaine, if you know?
I really, to be honest with you, I don't know, but I know I was just looking for it nonstop because I was in active addiction.
Do you know if he used your phone for cocaine, crack, or not?
Yes.
And would he do that at various hours of the day?
Yes.
Would it be unusual for him to use your phone for crack cocaine purposes at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning?
No.
Was it your understanding that he was able to obtain cocaine and provide it to persons like yourself and others?
Yes.
If I were to indicate, do you know a gentleman named Kristopher Torgerson?
No.
You don't know a fellow by the name of Spider?
Nope.
Do you recognize the person seated at council table here with the Glasses with the orange trim and the tan sweater?
Nope.
If I were to ask you about a telephone call received at 715-393-5335 at 3:29 a.m. on October 10, 2010, would you have any recollection of that particular telephone call? Was around that period of time Mr. Borse securing cocaine for your use?
Very cool. Very well could have been. At that was a long time ago. I have no recollection, to be honest with you, but it could have very well have been.
Judge, I object to ask that it be stricken speculation.
Okay, sustained.
Did you previously had a crack cocaine addiction?
Correct.
You've overcome it.
Yes, I've been clean for 6 years.
Were you suffering from that addiction in October of 2010?
Yes, I was.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Just a couple, very few. Just so it's clear, you have no idea who Kristopher Torgerson is?
No, sir.
No idea who a person, never heard the name or the nickname Spider before?
Until this trial started, no.
And you said Mr. Boris might use your phone to try to purchase crack cocaine,
Yes.
correct? He was not selling crack cocaine?
No.
Nothing else?
But Mr. Borse, when he obtained the crack cocaine, he'd give it to people, correct?
Me?
You know if he gave it to anybody else?
No.
Oh, do you have personal knowledge that the only person Mr. Borse would give crack cocaine to was you? No
Yes, because I gave him the money and it was for me.
Okay.
I was an active addict.
I have nothing further. May I see if another witness is present?
Go ahead. So you may sit down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Watch your step.
Am I allowed to leave?
Yes, you're allowed to leave.
The defense judge would call Clifford Hayes.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony what you give the truth and the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Watch your step. Lawyer, if you need it, speak into the mic, use it.
Would you state your first and last name and spell it for the record, please?
Clifford Hayes, CLIFFORD HAYES.
I'm going to draw your... How old are you?
I'm 31.
Are you currently employed?
Absolutely.
Where are you working?
Crystal Finish.
Do you live in the state of Wisconsin, in the city of Wausau, state of Wisconsin?
Absolutely.
Did you back in 2010, October 2010?
Yes.
Do you remember where you were living on that at that period of time?
On 3rd and Oak.
3rd and Oak, did you say?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you know Kristopher Torgerson?
Absolutely.
Do you recognize him in the courtroom?
Yes.
Would you identify him, please?
He has on a tan, sweater with, glasses and a tattoo on his neck. Caucasian fellow.
Did you know him by any other name?
Spider.
Do you remember the vehicles that he was driving back in October 2010?
Van, I think tan at the time, and the Jeep.
What color was the Jeep?
I don't even recall.
Did you have any business relationship with him back in October 2010?
Absolutely.
What was it?
I sold him cocaine.
Did I say that?
I sold him cocaine.
Would you do that at various times of the day?
Absolutely.
Would it sometimes be in the middle of the night, like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning?
I had a thing where I sleep when I die, so you can call me anytime you want it.
Right, but what I'm asking you is, would this business relationship go on in the middle of the night, in the early morning, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
What would he give you in exchange for the cocaine?
Maybe the Jeep, money. I mean, whatever, add up to whatever you wanted.
Do you remember your telephone, the number you were utilizing back in the fall of 2010?
I don't recall at the moment, but I do think it was like a 302 number or something of that sort.
Tell me if this number sounds familiar. 715-302-0849.
Yeah,
Yeah, what, sir?
that was the number I recall having.
Would you have a landline or a cell phone?
Just like a cell phone.
If I were to tell you that records reveal that Mr. Torgerson called that number 9 times between 3:32 a.m. and 3:51 a.m. on October 10, 2010, would that be unusual behavior by him?
No, that's how he called.
You need to remove your hands to your face so people can see.
I say no. That's how he called.
How he called for what purpose?
If he wanted his Jeep back, or if he wanted to get in contact with me for whatever he wanted to get.
Yeah, what would he typically want to get?
He did some cocaine,
What kind of cocaine?
crack.
I have nothing further.
Russ?
Very briefly, good morning, Mr. Hayes.
Good morning.
You indicated that Mr. Torgerson, as you know, as Spider, if he would have called 9 times, does that mean that maybe in the middle of the night he was having a hard time getting a hold of you?
Yes.
And is Mr. Torgerson a person that you knew to have a pretty rough addiction, like a strong addiction to crack cocaine?
Yes.
Is he a person that you would describe as doing anything for crack cocaine?
Not to my knowledge that I remember or recall at the time of knowing him.
Did the two of you have a friend relationship outside of your business dealings?
Yes.
Do you still consider Mr. Torgerson a friend?
I don't have many friends, but associates.
If Mr. Torgerson had called you, as counsel mentioned, 9 times between 3:32 and 3:51, you indicated he might have been calling you at those hours for his Jeep or for crack cocaine. Would that have indicated to you that he had been unable to find crack cocaine earlier in the night?
No, that wouldn't have given me that perception. No.
Just that he wanted more?
Yeah.
I have another question, thank you.
And I have nothing. Thank you.
Sir, you're excused.
Go to the next witness, and if I could treat him as Lieutenant William Cole.
Okay.
You're excused, sir. Thank you.
Let's swear you in again.
Please tell the truth, the testimony, what to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Morning, Lieutenant.
Morning.
Lieutenant, I just have some questions about this morning, not long, sir, about your prior communications with a witness, in this case, Richard Hawkins, okay?
Okay.
The first communication we've established through prior testimony was a phone call with him that you had with him around Christmas time 2011. Do you recall that?
Yes.
By way of summary, on multiple occasions during this telephone call, is it true that Mr. Hawkins denied he accompanied Torgerson to the Wabino cabin at any time?
Yes, he did.
He specifically said, I wasn't with him when he went to the grandmother's place, correct?
Correct.
He said, I didn't go with him when he took it up to store it, correct?
Yes.
And you in fact asked him directly, multiple times, about whether he went up north with Mr. Torgerson, and he clearly said no, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall that in that telephone conference, he also asked you a number of questions, such as, when did Miss Lowe disappear? If you remember.
Yes, I believe he did.
And he asked you whether Torgerson did something with Andrea Wadinsky's boat. If you recall.
I don't recall specifically what he asked me about there.
And he would ask you if his cell phone records could be tracked. Do you remember that?
I just don't recall there. I'd have to look at my report.
Right. Not only did you offer this interview would have been audio taped, correct?
Yes, it was.
And it's about, if I recall, about a 45-minute recording.
Yes.
And then off of that recording, you do a report, right?
Right.
But it's not a verbatim account of the recorded interview, it's just a summary, right?
Right.
Do you remember asking him if he knew something terrible happened to this woman named Stephanie Lowe, he would say it? You remember asking him that?
Yes.
And did he say, yes, I would, because I wouldn't lie about it to get myself in trouble, correct?
Right.
Remember him saying to you, I try to tell the truth instead of telling a lie?
Yes.
And from this interview, for quite a while, he's going to communicate that I don't want to get in no trouble, correct?
Correct.
He says at the end in this interview, I don't remember the girl you are trying to tell me about, correct?
Yes.
He tells you during this interview that he lived for a 2 to 3 week period with a woman that he met at Breakaway named Chris Babcock, correct?
Yes.
He said he was dating her for a time in late August and September in the Mosinee area just south of Wausau.
Yes.
When he meets with the California detectives on April 9, 2013, that interview was recorded, correct?
Yes.
That interview occurred at your request because you were trying to locate Mr. Hawkins in California.
Yes.
You had difficulty in the intervening year and a half.
Yes.
You've listened to that recording?
Not recently, no.
Let's move on. After that April 9th meeting with the Long Beach detectives, you and Detective Holtz fly out to Long Beach, California to meet with Hawkins, Mr. Hawkins, correct?
Yes.
And this is the meeting that's going to be at the church facility, right?
Yes. Right.
Mr. Hawkins was very clearly asked whether he assisted Torgerson in taking Andrea Wadinsky's boat up north, and he denied it, correct?
Yes, he denied. What I recall is him saying he rode along with Chris, having no knowledge whatsoever about Stephanie Lowe's body being in the vehicle.
Right. In this California interview, he does for the first time indicate he did go with Torgerson up north, but doesn't really remember anything else, right?
Right.
Okay. Didn't even remember going to the hardware store to get the shovel, right?
Right.
But indicates that he did remember that when they got to the cabin, he sat down at a picnic table and had a mid-morning beer, right?
Yes.
And he said Torgerson went to go do something, right?
Right.
And then he said Torgerson came back, picked them up, and they returned to Wausau.
Correct.
And then it was around this time that Andrea Wadinsky joins the interview by speakerphone, right?
Yes.
But even after that, Mr. Hawkins indicates he has no knowledge of any body, B-O-D-Y, or what Torgerson was doing that morning, correct?
Yes.
After that, Pastor Joe, I think his name is Carrillo, is brought into the room for a prayer to be said, correct?
Or what?
Brought into the room, sorry, for a prayer to be said, correct?
That was not our idea. That was actually a spontaneous idea by Pastor Joe, so that was fine with us. But we didn't orchestrate a prayer by any means.
So was Pastor Joe in the beginning of the meeting?
No, I don't believe he was sitting in there when we started the interview.
If I put, if your report indicates that I read it wrong, you suggested bringing Pastor Joe into the room. Is that wrong?
No, I recall going out there and talking to him, asking if Pastor Joe would come in and help us with speaking with Mr. Hawkins. I'm just saying that it was Pastor Joe's idea to pray. That actually kind of caught us off guard that he was going to do that.
After the prayer, Hawkins reported that after the hardware store stopped, he and Torgerson just drove around for a half hour and went back to Wausau, right?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. After the prayer, Hawkins said, okay, after the hardware store, Torgerson and I just drove around for a half hour and then went back to Wausau.
I believe that's correct, yes.
And then a second prayer was said. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And then Mr. Hawkins said he saw Stephanie Lowe's body in the Jeep, but only when they were at the hardware store while Torgerson was putting the shovel in the back seat. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then he also said after the second prayer that Torgerson acted alone in burying Mrs. Lowe's body after dragging her from the Jeep, and he did nothing at the burial site, right?
Right.
He said, I helped in no way with Miss Lowe, correct?
Yes.
He's brought back to Wisconsin for a more in-depth interview, correct?
Yes.
And that interview happens 2 days later on April 13, 2013 with yourself and Detective Holtz.
Yes.
Detective Holtz challenges Hawkins by saying, look, you took the boat up north and you didn't see anything in the boat or Jeep until the hardware store. Remember her asking that?
Yes.
And Hawkins' reply was, I am half asleep, right?
Yes.
You asked to clarify if he went to Miss Lowe's apartment that morning, and he says, I wasn't with him at that time, correct?
Correct.
He reports on multiple occasions in this interview the only time in his life that he was ever at Stephanie Lowe's apartment was to drink a beer, and Torgerson went over there to smoke marijuana with Eric Holmes, right?
Right.
He says, I didn't put a hand on Stephanie Lowe, correct?
Yes.
He eventually says that Torgerson told him he stabbed Miss Lowe in the neck, right? In
Yes.
this interview.
Yes.
Because he's starting to come up with more information, right?
Yes.
And when he tells you that, he points to a lower area on the right side of his neck, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You're still not convinced he's forthcoming with everything, so you ask if Pastor Joe should become re-involved, right?
Yes.
And Hawkins says, no, I told you everything, right?
Yes.
You, at this time, during this interview, are fairly convinced that he went to Stephanie Lowe's apartment after Torgerson picked him up that morning, right?
Yes.
And you repeatedly ask him that, and he repeatedly just says, no, not true, right?
Correct.
He expresses concern at the end of the interview about whether he's going to jail for the rest of his life, right?
Yes.
Do you remember saying, make it make sense, absolve yourself? Do you remember saying that to him?
Yes.
And he's still concerned, and he says, I am going to jail. You cannot guarantee me I am not, can you? Remember him saying that?
Yes.
And do you remember replying, I think it's going to depend on how you help us, right?
I'm not sure if that's exactly what he said. I would have to see my report, but something similar to that probably.
Okay. You remember saying we're going to squeeze everything out of you that we can get about this.
Yes.
He then says, I went to the apartment, but Torgerson himself brought her down the stairs. Right?
Yes.
He says, you cannot guarantee me you're not going to lock me up for the rest of my life. He repeats that theme rather repeatedly, doesn't he?
Yes.
And at one point you say, we are not going to worry about that right now. Help us all the way through here and testify. Remember saying that?
Yes.
Remember Detective Holt saying, this is your chance to get out of this?
That's hearsay.
Effective on the listener, is my reply.
That's exception.
Does he ask if he needs an attorney? The end of that interview?
I don't believe so. I don't recall.
Okay. The end of the interview is he said, we are not, as he told, we are not charging you with everything. We have a bond of trust.
Was he told that?
Yes.
I don't recall. I'd have to look at my report. I'm not saying we didn't, but I just don't recall.
Was he ever told, we need your help to testify, we have the hammer over your head?
That's another one I don't recall.
Well, were representations like that, or similar to that, made to him that you really need his help, right?
Yes, he was absolutely the key to helping us find a body.
But he remained concerned about what was going to happen to himself, right?
Yes.
And it was communicated to him the way to help himself is to assist you in all aspects of the investigation.
Yes.
Okay. April 15, 2013, this is the trip to Wabena, okay?
Okay.
The first trip where it's you, Detective Holtz, and Detective Buckner. Are you with me?
Yes.
I don't have much more. There's some talk about what he observed up there when he went to the apartment, because he's finally come around to being at the apartment, right?
Yes.
And he says Miss Lowe was on the floor at the foot of the bed, wrapped in what appeared to be a blanket when he first saw her. Recall that?
My belief is that when he first saw her, she was on the bed when he first came into the room, but then she was, Mr. Torgerson pulled her off the bed onto the floor.
But I'm asking you what Mr. Hawkins reported on April 15th. Would it refresh your recollection to look at your report?
Yes.
What page, counsel?
2060 on the red base stamp. May I approach?
26
On the red beds.
What's the other one? Oh,
2030.
Show you the report dated
Regarding that April interview. April 15th interview. And I know it's kind of a lengthy report, right?
Yeah, it was authored by Detective Buckner, just for clarification.
Okay. Oh, okay. Did you author a report concerning this incident? This interview?
This interview?
Yeah.
I'm taking Mr. Hawkins up to the Wabeno area.
And
I
his
don't believe
statement-
so, but I was there. You know.
Okay. Have you reviewed Detective Buckner's report?
This one, no, I have not. So
Okay.
if I could take a minute.
So you don't know what Hawkins, you don't know, you have a specific recollection on that date, Mr. Hawkins indicating that when he got up to the apartment, Miss Lowe was on the bed and not on the floor at the foot of the bed.
And I'm going to object. Again, and I know that we've covered this before, and it's an issue that the attorney thinks is for cross, but it's not stating accurately what's in the report.
I'm going to rephrase that.
Sure. Let me take the report back. Did Richard Lewis Hawkins, who you are now, ever report that when he went upstairs to Miss Lowe's apartment, that Stephanie Lowe when he first saw her, was on the floor at the foot of the bed. Do you remember that?
What I recall, because he has been interviewed about that extensively a number of times, and I may have authored a different report of a different interview where his initial recollection of walking or seeing Stephanie Lowe's body was on the bed. And then I know he talked about how Mr. Torgerson pulled her off the bed onto the floor. But she was already wrapped in bedding.
You don't remember him ever saying she was already on the floor, wrapped in a blanket when he was there, but her feet were exposed. You don't remember him ever saying that?
I'm not saying he didn't, I just don't remember
I understand.
him saying that.
Okay. Do you remember him saying on April 15, 2013, that he and Torgerson were in the apartment for only 2 to 3 minutes?
I, again, don't recall, but I wouldn't deny he said that, I guess.
At least throughout his interviews, he's indicating they were there no longer than a handful of minutes.
Right. Yes, they were not there long.
Do you remember in this interview he says, or actually this is the trip now, he points specifically to a store and says, that's where Torgerson bought 1 beer, right?
Yes.
What did you later determine whether that place ever had a liquor license?
I believe Detective Holtz determined it didn't at that time.
Did not have a liquor license on the morning of October 10, 2010.
Yes.
May 3, 2013, this is an interview with Detective Buckner and yourself at the Wausau Police Department, correct? Remember May 3?
Yes.
Do you remember him saying at that time he never saw Torgerson with any keys to Miss Lowe's apartment?
Yes.
Do you remember him saying the doors were open when they went?
Yes.
Do you remember him saying that Andrew Wadinsky never tossed him a shirt with blood on it at any time?
Yes.
Do you remember him saying, I'm guilty of hiding a corpse during this interview?
Yes.
And do you remember you saying your penance is to be a good witness and cooperate?
Yes.
Do you remember adding that the Wausau Police Department's recommendation to the district attorney, if nothing surprises you as you go along, and as long as you testify, you are going home? Do you remember saying that?
I don't recall.
Was there anything, did you remember saying, better to testify as a witness than as another defendant?
I don't recall that either.
Were there assertions made to Mr. Hawkins on May 3, 2013 that he, as long as he continues to cooperate, he's going to go home?
Yes, we always informed him that we needed his assistance, and knowing the circumstances of what got him involved, we were looking for his assistance with helping us find Stephanie Lowe more than looking to try to put him in jail for what he did.
And also, not only his assistance in finding Stephanie Lowe, but to function as a witness in any prosecution resulting of that recovery of the body, correct?
Yes.
October 24, 2013, that's going to be the trip to Wabino involving yourself, Detective Holtz, Andrea Wadinsky, and Mr. Hawkins, correct?
Yes.
This is the day when you guys are together for a period of hours, right?
Yes.
But before that happens, there is a meeting as between Mr. Hawkins and the Marathon County District Attorney Ken Hireman, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Heimerman makes the criminal charging decisions in this county, or did back then, in 2010, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Hawkins said during that conversation, if you remember, tell me what my circumstances would be. Remember that? Or if you remember something to that effect.
Something to that effect, yes.
And there's a reference, you also make a reference to him being a hero, right? Remember that? The hero talk?
I don't recollect it.
What was the purpose of Mr. Heimerman there, if you know?
Mr. Hawkins had always been very concerned. Just from when we first met him, there was always a distrust of police with him, and so as much as we tried to reassure him that we needed his assistance, he just was never sure if our word was good. So Mr. Heimerman had offered
I
to.
object that it's going to be hearsay at this point, so I don't think that I can.
And I submit it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but the effect on the listener, Mr. Hawkins.
Of course, it's for the truth of the matter.
Well, I say otherwise, so the court will rule. Thank you. Mr. Hawkins was always concerned about himself, right? Throughout.
No, not always, but certainly there was a portion worried about getting in trouble, yes.
Was there a communication with you from on any day that you had with Mr. Hawkins where he didn't express concern about whether he was going to be charged criminally or be put in jail? Did a day that you had a communication with him go by that didn't happen? Understand what I'm asking, sir?
Yes, I acknowledge he was certainly concerned about himself. Yeah, I just wanted known that he also expressed concern for Stephanie's family at times and wanting to help find her body.
I understand.
Concern that seemed genuine to me.
Understand. Was the concern about his own liberty, did that seem genuine too?
Yes.
After Mr. Heimerman leaves the office, Mr. Hawkins says, look, there's something I've left out. I've been lying about something in particular about my role at the burial site. Remember?
Yes.
He says, I helped get Miss Lowe's body out of the Jeep, and then I just set her on the ground, right?
Yes.
And he said, I didn't tell you this before because that would involve me more, right?
Yeah, that was his belief.
At some point on that trip, did you direct Hawkins or suggest to Hawkins and Mr. Hawkins and Andrew Wadinsky that they talk about what Torgerson told each of them and what they each saw? Did you make that suggestion?
Yes.
March 21 and March 22, are you aware that Mr. Hawkins testified in this jury trial? Those dates, close enough.
Yes.
And were you aware that he testified under oath that he helped Torgerson roll away a big rock so Torgerson could dig the grave for Miss Lowe? Are you aware of that?
No.
Did he previously report to police in any of his interviews that he helped Torgerson roll away a big rock so Torgerson could dig the grave for Miss Lowe? Or would that have been new information?
That would have been new. He always previously denied doing anything with the rocks.
Are you aware that he testified that he helped carry Miss Lowe's body to the grave? You're not aware of that?
No.
Did he previously report that to police in any of his interviews?
No.
Are you aware that he testified that after Miss Lowe was buried, he helped Torgerson roll a rock upon the grave? Are you aware he testified to that effect?
No.
Would that have been anything he previously reported to police?
No.
In fact, he made it clear all he did at the very end is just help get her out of the Jeep, correct?
Yes.
And lay her on the ground, right?
Right.
Mr. Hawkins, based upon your contacts with him, always appeared to be very fearful, correct? He was afraid.
Yes.
He was also, during contact with you, untruthful, correct?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ross?
I'm going to start at the end and go backwards. Attorney Wilmoth asked you if Mr. Hawkins' story had changed over the course of time. There's really no doubt that that has happened, correct?
Yes.
Have you or Detective Holtz, to your knowledge, or anyone from law enforcement ever gone over police reports with Mr. Hawkins?
No.
Did either of you ever tell Mr. Hawkins what to say or go over evidence that existed in the case with him to try to make a story match something else?
No. He was always told to just tell the truth.
And to your knowledge, throughout the course of the investigation, there were no promises made to Mr. Hawkins in exchange for his testimony, right?
No, he was never told that he wouldn't get charged with a crime.
So, if he's not promised anything and his story keeps involving himself more, well, never mind, I withdraw that question. As Mr. Hawkins, as time goes by throughout the investigation, Mr. Hawkins' story incriminates himself more and more, correct?
Yes.
And his involvement becomes more and more in the burial of Stephanie Lowe.
Yes.
There was a period of a number of years where Mr. Hawkins withheld information. We've covered that, right?
Yes.
Did Mr. Hawkins, when he finally told you his involvement, indicate that he had been threatened by Mr. Torgerson?
Yes.
And how long, I think we covered this on direct when you testified the other day, but you've been with law enforcement and doing investigations for a long period of time, right?
Yes.
And you've been able to judge people's demeanor and things of that nature?
I'd like to think so, yes.
Did Mr. Hawkins seem afraid when he was talking to you and to Detective Holtz about, just afraid in general? Did he seem fearful?
Yes.
And as Attorney Wilmoth made clear, he was in fact afraid about what would happen to himself, right?
Yes.
And you indicated he had also received threats from Mr. Torgerson. Did he seem fearful of Mr. Torgerson as well?
Yes.
Did Mr. Hawkins, there was a lot of talk about him being concerned with being charged or with having consequences for his involvement. Did he continue to be concerned about all of those things after meeting with the DA?
Yes. He continually expressed concerns. The meeting with the DA certainly helped some.
There was, I think there was some confusion, and I know you weren't present for Mr. Hawkins' testimony, but you had a lot of contact and conversations with Mr. Hawkins over the years. Is that a fair statement?
More than anybody else involved in the investigation, yes.
Does Mr. Hawkins, just based on your experiences, does he seem to have trouble with dates and times and things of that nature?
Yes.
When Attorney Wilmoth asked you about stopping for a beer, you indicated that Detective Holtz had determined that the place that he thought that they stopped did not have a liquor license, right?
Right.
Did Mr. Hawkins seem certain about where they had stopped or anything of that nature? Was he certain?
I believe he initially thought they stopped there on the way up. Later, he he thought maybe it was on the way back to Wausau, to the Wausau area. That was just something we were never able to reconcile. Andrea never recalled them stopping anywhere on the way up, that they were always right behind her, which made more sense to us. So.
It is accurate that before, very recently, Mr. Hawkins had not indicated that he had helped move a rock or helped with the carrying of Ms. Lowe to the grave, correct?
Yes.
When Mr. Hawkins finally gave all of the information about potentially where Ms. Lowe was buried, I think we discussed this yesterday, but he was very close to where she actually was buried, right?
I felt so, yes.
And nobody told him the general area of where Ms. Lowe was buried, right?
No.
So as Mr. Hawkins is admitting involvement, the information that he's providing to law enforcement is accurate, right?
Yes, I feel his efforts to help us find where Stephanie Lowe was buried was very genuine. He certainly was very disappointed after he tried to assist us with that when we brought him to Wausau. And where she was eventually found was the layout of the area was very consistent with the area where he had showed us on the other forest road.
When Mr. Hawkins started admitting more and more involvement, did you notice a change in his demeanor toward law enforcement?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
No, and maybe it was a poorly worded question. I guess when Mr. Hawkins finally came clean, or I guess started relating more information about his involvement, did his demeanor change with you? Did you notice a change in his demeanor?
Yes, just seemed to have more trust. Seemed like a weight was slowly getting lifted off his shoulders.
Did Mr., and I think you mentioned this on direct, but did Mr. Hawkins seem remorseful for his involvement in hiding Ms. Lowe?
Yes. He's mentioned to me about how it's really been eating away at him over the years.
Throughout the course of your employment as a detective and as a lieutenant, just with law enforcement in general, is it uncommon for people to reveal more information as to their culpability over time?
No, was not unusual whatsoever as far as a little bit of truth, a little more truth, a little more truth, and less lying about something, especially something as serious as this.
And just to finish, the information that Mr. Hawkins has provided you up to date as far as Ms. Lowe's location and things that you've been able to confirm, it has been accurate, correct?
Argumentative. Object.
What was yours, sir?
Yes.
No more questions?
Just gotta get this clear. Real simple. Did you and/or Detective Holtz indicate to this man that it would be the Wausau Police Department's recommendation to the district attorney that if he kept assisting you in the investigation of the Stephanie Lowe case, your recommendation would be that he wouldn't be charged with a criminal offense?
Based on everything we knew in this case and how he got involved with this case, yes.
Yet he still expressed any concern of getting, quote, put away like Torgerson, right?
Yes.
And you told him that depends on how much he helps us, but only the prosecutor can make deals with him, correct?
Correct.
And you're aware that he's been charged with no criminal offense, right?
Right.
not been charged with hiding a corpse, party to the crime, right?
Right,
And he hasn't been charged with obstructing line of police, right?
right.
That's all I have.
Can I ask one more? It is. It's actually two questions. Mr. Torgerson lied to you repeatedly throughout the investigation as well, correct?
Yes.
Is he charged with obstructing?
No.
Is he charged with what was the question?
Obstructing.
Nothing off that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fox.
Judge, can I have a short break? Probably 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Would the jury like a short break at this time, too? Okay. It doesn't matter.